Tommy Curran, how we doing this week?
Tremendous. How are you?
Oh, well, we're a little hung up on last night's game, and I do want to get to the Patriots, but you're a hoops guy. I know you're a hoops guy. You put on a show at the Fourier thing at the Auerbach Center a month or so ago. So do you have anything you want to get off your chest about the Celtics last night before we get into the Patriots?
A million things. Start with one thing that Joe Mazzulla was saying about urgency. There's a really fine line between urgency and panic. And the Celtics have a tendency to lose their urgency, and when they try to regain it, it results in panic. And that's kind of what I saw in the third quarter with them coming undone. And that's kind of what I saw when they finally did use a timeout late and say, hey, see the guy over there who had 51 the other night? Let's get him the ball. So coming out of that timeout, Miami knew what the directive was, to get Jason Tatum the ball. And what did Tatum think? Well, they need me to score. So he wasn't a multi-dimensional player at that juncture. That's why he was so bad down the stretch. They knew what was coming, and he felt as if he was now under the gun to save them. And there are so many, I hate to use the word hero ball, but I got this. I'll fix this. I'll fix what's going on. And Jaylen Brown has it. Marcus Smart has it. And Tatum certainly has it. And when you watch Jimmy Butler, you know who their alpha is before the opening tip. You know it when they get off the bus. And with the Celtics, when he talks about versatility, Mazzulla does, or flexing from one thing to another and not knowing now, even 105 games into the season, what the roles are going to be, everyone knows the roles for Miami. They know Pat Riley sets the culture, Eric Spoelstra then administers the culture, and Jimmy Butler carries it out. And everyone does what those three say. There's an awful lot of mouths to feed on the Celtics, who have three first top 10 picks among Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. You have Malcolm Brogdon, who's been a Rookie of the Year and a Sixth Man of the Year. You have Al Horford, who's a veteran Lion. And there are so many voices and so many mouths to feed and egos to assuage that over the course of time, you get into a game with a team that has a power structure that's very simple, and you have the best basketball player, not the most talented guy, but the best basketball player, offensively, defensively, and in terms of poise in Jimmy Butler, and you're screwed if you don't keep the same urgency.
Tommy, while we have you on a roll with the Celtics, I've seen you go back and forth with some people on Twitter about the timeout debates over Joe Mazzulla. So coming off of last night's game, how do you feel about how he utilizes or doesn't utilize his timeouts in games?
I think it's a little overblown. Yeah, they could have used one last night. But think of the practical aspect of what happens when they go to a timeout and they go to see their 33-year-old coach. He doesn't have Damon Stoudemire next to him right now and is not Ime Udoka. And I don't know how much constructive stuff happens there. He's a guy who was an interim coach who deserved to have that tag removed, who deserves to come back next year, who deserves to develop as a coach. But I just don't think right now he is equipped to make them definitively better. And I wonder if that's sometimes why he doesn't call the timeouts. Well, what am I going to tell them that I didn't tell them? They know. Work through it. I mean, you're two All-NBA guys. We have a Defensive Player of the Year who tells everyone he's a gifted point guard. Figure it out. And I think that that's kind of a disconnect that between the team, which Jones was pointing out, reading between the lines of what Mazzulla is saying and what they do on the court. Like, I think Mazzulla is putting it on them. Look, I told them what to do. We were prepared. So it's fascinating to watch this play out, and because there is very definitively a power structure in Miami, and here it's very much about making sure people are comfortable and well fed.
We're talking with Tommy Curran here. I have a football question, I guess, if that's okay. Should we do it? Should we do football questions here? Should we keep this going? All right, I got a football.
No. I mean, look, Tom Curran, very versatile,
he can talk anything,
or diverse, as Joe Mazzulla would say. But yes, he can go a lot of different ways. But I'd like some football stuff. Sure.
Okay, Tommy. James White said, or implied, I guess, that Mac Jones may have to earn back the trust and respect of his teammates. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you think that's something he has to earn back this year?
Yeah, and it was great. He was on our Patriots Talk podcast, and James was very illuminating on how the team will feel about him. And, he said, look, he has to re-earn the trust of his teammates. I think the greater point was reestablish his level of play. Guys believe it, but they need to see it. They need to see a guy who's not going to eye roll or kick rocks when things don't go his way. And I think that they believe they'll see it, but I do think that he has to re-earn the trust, because as much as we want to say everybody's important, the way the quarterback goes impacts everyone. And I thought it was interesting for James to say that, and he actually alluded unprompted to the notion of Bailey Zappi. And I don't think he was necessarily talking simply about the locker room, but more fans and the media, and the notion that, well, they've seen another guy do it too. What will Mac do to fend off or silence any doubt? And he really has to have a very good offseason, a very good training camp, and a very good start to the year to really put all of it to bed. He should be able to drive a spear through the entire conversation, and it will be a failing if by mid-September he hasn't.
So, Tom, I want to circle back to something. Maybe you talked about this already on TV, but Robert Krafts saying the Patriots hit on their first 7 draft picks or whatever it is. I'm paraphrasing what he said. I have a theory as to why he said that. Like, maybe he's sat in enough draft rooms with Robert Kraft, with Bill Belichick, rather, and he's looked at the top of the board and said, well, there's a name on the top of the board. And then Bill skips past it and takes, some special teamer out of some no-name school, and Robert goes, what the hell are we doing here? Is he just saying they stuck to their board? Was that his way of saying they stuck to their board this year?
It seemed to me in hearing Robert's comments that he said there were 7 players we targeted and we got them. Now, I can't imagine there were only 7 players on their board and they got them all. And they were trying actively to move up to take other players. They didn't come out with a tackle. I'm sure they would have loved to have had a tackle, given the tackle situation with expiring contracts all over the place. But I think that Robert is giving the benefit of the doubt. But they got 2 extremely highly rated players and one player who seems as if, in Marte Mapu, that a lot of the NFL thinks is going to be a very intriguing player to have on your team. So they can be giddy about the 2 talents they got at the top, even though I think only one of them will make a seismic contribution, and that'll be Gonzalez in 2023. And they can be happy about the depth they added, but it's hard to do handsprings about the entire draft. You can set off all the streamers and break out the sheet cake for Christian Gonzalez, because that's a great pick. But I wouldn't go cuckoo about a great draft.
I want to ask you about something that Mike Lombardi mentioned on your buddy Phil Perry's Next Pats podcast. He was talking about the offensive linemen, the number of offensive linemen that the Patriots took in the draft and how much that will actually help Mac Jones's development. Do you feel like drafting those linemen was a direct investment in Mac Jones in the future? And is it something that Mac Jones would maybe want as a pocket passer over, say, a highly, higher drafted weapon?
I do. I think, again, I've said this before, and I think there's a mixture among you three and your opinions on it. I think Mac Jones is intrigued by, okay, how will we look? Because these players, the totality of the offensive skill position players should be better than we showed last year. I think we can get way more out of them. If I can get protection, if guys know who they're supposed to pick up, if we can have some good health and full focus up there and not have, offsides and any other variety of offensive miscues lining up in the wrong spot, and that includes the skill position players like Kendrick Bourne, who was a one-man epidemic of lining up in the wrong spot. If they can get that, then I think that the offensive skill position players can be good enough. But they had to have better protection, because that's where it all started, in my estimation, last year. It was a jailbreak too often, and he wasn't even getting to his second read. And when he got there, there were 3 guys standing in the same spot. It was absurdly dysfunctional.
All right. He is Tom E. Curran, not just a guy with football thoughts, as we learned today.
Curran.
Very, very versatile, Tom E. Curran. Check out his work at NBC Sports Boston. He joins us every week on the Harbor One Hotline. Tom, as always, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
You guys are great. See ya.
Tommy.
Thanks, Tom.
Tom E. Curran with the Celtics takes there.